Coming up on Lawmakers, Governor Sonny Perdue formally announces the location of a new Kia manufacturing plant in West Point. A Senate committee passes legislation that would create a sales tax holiday on certain items in August. And the House works into the wee hours to finish its Legislative Day 30 schedule. We'll have the highlights. Those stories and more are coming up next.
This is Lawmakers, your source for all the news from under the Gold Dome. Here are your anchors, Gerald Bryant and Wandy Lawson.
Good evening, everyone. I'm David Zelski, filling in for Gerald Bryant. Also on Lawmakers, the Senate reconsiders legislation that would privatize one of Georgia's 7 mental health hospitals.
And our leadership interview series continues with House Majority Whip Barry Fleming and Minority Whip Carolyn Hughley. But first, our lead story tonight, Governor Perdue formally announces a new Kia plant. Today, Governor Sonny Perdue formally announced the deal to bring Kia Motors to West Point, Georgia. That deal was finalized yesterday in Seoul, South Korea, where the auto company is based. Lawmakers' Jesse Freeman is now standing by live at the Capitol with more on that story. Jesse.
Well, and Wandy, Governor Perdue was joined by lawmakers from around the state as he made today's announcement. A troop county contingent and the South Korean Consul General to the southeastern U.S. was on hand as well. The governor says the $1.2 billion project will bring 2,500 jobs to Georgia. The governor also took the opportunity to address concerns that the state was giving the company $400 million in incentives to bring the plant to Georgia.
We are glad that it's signed, sealed, and delivered, and we look forward to a groundbreaking in just a little over a month in late April. I realize as far as I've traveled, the news has traveled faster, and that you all know that Kia is coming to Georgia. And I want to take this opportunity to publicly thank this company, Kia Motor Company, for their business, and to thank the many partners in Georgia's economic development team who make this deal happen, as well as our local partners.
I do have many friends and neighbors that are here with us today, some in the back of the room and some on the side. And this is just about the most exciting thing that's happened in our neck of the woods in a long time.
The economic multiplier that we calculate from Georgia Tech and others is that it is a good return on investment, certainly from a local perspective and a state perspective. So we look at it as an investment. We look at it as a long-term relationship, which we think will enhance the economic opportunity, not just in this part of Georgia, but all over.
And the Georgia Department of Economic Development says Korea already invests nearly $2 billion into Georgia's economy. Some department executives are in Korea now courting more business possibilities. Reporting live, I'm Jesse Freeman for Lawmakers.
Crossover Day is behind us, and each chamber is beginning to spend a little more time on the other's legislation. Today, the Senate Finance Committee passed out House Bill 1219, which is the extension of the sales tax holiday for school supplies.
We bring to you House Bill 1219, which is the sales tax holiday, the extension of the sales tax holiday, which we've been doing for a number of years. Obviously, this is including the school supplies for students in our schools, as well as clothing and footwear, with a sales price of $100 or less per item. Personal computers and equipment is also included in this, with a sales price of $1,500 or less. And we've also added the energy-efficient products with a sales price of $1,500 or less, and these products are non-commercial use or personal use that we're excluding to that.
Chairman Cagle says that the sales tax holiday has been a boon for teachers and students, as well as the sales industry.
Several of the governor's initiatives failed passage in the House yesterday. Addressing the Georgia Federation of Republican Women today, House Speaker Glenn Richardson expressed concern about the action of House Democrats.
They would not allow you to vote on a constitutional amendment to make sure that HOPE is only used for pre-K and college. They want to keep using it or having the potential to use it for other things. We wanted to put it in the Constitution and lock it down once and for all. They also defeated another constitutional amendment the governor's been pushing called Faith and Family. It's a pretty simple proposition. It just makes legal that if a church or faith-based organization is supplying services that the state can put money in there.
Speaker Richardson also said he was disappointed about the failure of House Bill 1445, allowing pharmacists to refuse patients medications they believe could terminate pregnancies. Meeting until almost 2 a.m., House Democrats and Republicans hashed out a compromise to provide General Assembly oversight for Medicaid modernization waivers while raising the cap on Medicaid asset recovery to $100,000.
If other states have 100,000, Georgia should too. That's the best we could do for our people in a very difficult situation.
House Bill 1473 passed 164 to 1 and moves to the Senate. An attempt to facilitate DUI arrests failed passage.
If you got a busy night or it's outside and it's raining or something, you read the wrong implied consent warning, which could happen, people are human, the whole case can be thrown out of court.
The removal of the requirement for suppression of the evidence where the rules are not followed means we have rules with no consequences for breaking them.
If you want to go back home and tell your constituents that you voted to tighten up our DUI law and that you're serious that we're going to have a tough but fair DUI law, then I would recommend a green vote. And if you don't believe that way, then you're free to vote red.
76 House members selected the green option, while 84 chose red. House Bill 1222 is dead for this session. The House agreed to allow Georgians to vote in a referendum on whether to create a trauma care trust fund to reimburse hospitals.
Georgia is a voluntary trauma network where the hospitals essentially volunteer and lose revenue over a period of years to the point that some are even threatening to pull out. We only have 4 right now level 1 trauma centers.
House Bill 1299 passed without opposition and moves to the Senate. Many who worked 3 weeks ago to defeat a measure prohibiting courts from dismissing civil cases on the basis of faulty paperwork had a change of heart. House Bill 1195 passed 111 to 51. It moves to the Senate. House Judiciary Chair Wendell Willard was not as successful with the final measure on the House calendar. At just past 1:30 this morning, House Bill 931, a move to change how county tax commissioners discharge tax judgments, failed.
What purpose does Representative Keene rise?
Mr. Speaker, I move this House now adjourn to 1 p.m. tomorrow.
On the gentleman's motion, this House adjourned to 1 p.m. today. Today. I was going to correct it. On the gentleman's motion, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Lock the doors and keep them here. The motion carries. This House is now adjourned to 1 p.m. this calendar day.
And just to correct some information we just provided, in order to pass those constitutional amendments, we required a supermajority of a 2/3 vote in the House.
A bill to privatize one of Georgia's 7 mental hospitals passed yesterday, but most likely died today because of a reconsideration vote. According to the Secretary of the Senate's office, SB 602 needed to pass the full Senate by the 30th legislative day, which was yesterday. Today's vote to reconsider put it back in Senate rules, making it too late for the House to accept. The bill's sponsor, Senator Preston Smith, explains why he wanted the Senate to vote against the reconsideration.
This is a mainstream conservative principle. It's about privatizing one of our 7 state mental health hospitals. We know that when you marry and partner private dollars and the public partnership together, you end up typically with a better product. I would hate very much to stand here next year and look at you all and say one of our state mental health hospitals closed because it didn't have the ability to continue moving forward when we had a chance to encourage an investment of $30 million or more into one of those state mental health hospitals.
This hospital is located in Senator Johnny Grant's district. He says an undertaking like privatizing these state facilities needs more time.
This was a very hard vote for many of us to take yesterday. My contention still is that this bill has not properly been vetted. The people that are involved, whether it's Department of Human Resources, advocates of mental health, and other folks throughout the state that are going to be affected by this, have not had an opportunity to have their voices heard. I think this is just a premature rush to get this bill passed, and I ask for your favorable consideration of the reconsideration vote.
The Senate voted 37 to 17 to reconsider this bill, so according to the Secretary of the Senate's office, it will not pass this year. The Senate voted today not to reconsider legislation that changes the scope of practice for chiropractors. Senate Bill 422 passed the Senate yesterday. A vote to reconsider would have kept it from passing this year. Senators Don Thomas and Rene Unterman had opposing views on this bill.
The chiropractors are definitely not qualified to look in the ears, the mouth. They're not qualified to do the MRIs, and it's going to run up costs tremendously. I just ask you to reconsider. This bill needs to be put at rest. I know it's steamrolling, but it needs to be put at rest.
In almost every shopping center that you go to, there's a chiropractor. And that chiropractor is taking care of business. He's taking care of sick people, or she's taking care of sick people. They're doing what they're supposed to do. You're only voting your conscience. And I don't think you should be punished or humiliated or scorned by the lizard shoes out there in the hall. You should do what you want to do. You put a mandate in. You should stick to your guns. And that's what you were put down here for. So I'm saying stick to your convictions, vote no, send a message to the House, and guess what? You know what? Everyone is so concerned about this, but guess what? Over in the House, the vote is probably going to be the same thing.
Again, the vote to reconsider failed, so Senate Bill 422 goes to the House.
Earlier, I spoke to House leadership about the progress that's been made thus far this session. I began with House Majority Whip Barry Fleming, who said the most important work was not accomplished on crossover day.
Some of the most important things we got rid of before Day 30, before crossover day. The eminent domain bill, the budget bill, the governor's 65% requirement for schools. So yesterday were smaller measures, I would say, with the exception of two measures that didn't pass. As you know, the Democrats fought against Governor Perdue's Hope Scholarship Protection constitutional amendment, and that was very unfortunate that that did not pass. So probably bigger what didn't pass than what did, I would say, yesterday.
Well, looking at those two measures of the governor's, the Hope Chest Amendment as well as the measure that you were speaking about there, the faith-based funding amendment, what do you think that the progress that can be made is, from your party's perspective on those measures? Are they dead for now, or are you planning to go forward with some other measures?
That's a tough decision at this point. They probably are dead. You know, they received a majority vote. A majority of the House representatives as well as the Senate were in favor of those proposals, but because they're constitutional amendments, it requires a supermajority of two-thirds vote. And my understanding is that the Democrats are pretty locked down on that, although most of them will privately tell you they understand that it is a good thing to protect the Hope Scholarship for Georgia students. They know this is an election year, and it would look very good for Governor Perdue to do that. And Lieutenant Governor Mark Taylor has been adamant at threatening the Democrats that if they vote for this, there would be consequences for them.
Well, as you kind of look ahead now, what are some of the big tasks ahead of you as the session does wind down?
Well, I think the budget, of course, the only thing we have to do every year we're here. The Senate has the budget now, and they'll bring that back to us. The eminent domain legislation is in the Senate. Also, the Child Protection Act punishing child molesters in the state of Georgia passed the House, and that's over on the Senate side also. So that'll be some of the bigger things that we'll have to deal with as we wind up the session.
And of course, you mentioned that it being an election year, obviously people do have to look forward to their own elections. Right. Do you have any forecast about what we can expect in terms of the length that the session is going to run and how much more time we're going to have here?
I would say probably sometime toward the end of March or the first couple of weeks in April we would be out of here. I don't think we'll go too much longer than we did last year, if not end about the same time. So I think we can wrap up the people's business and get on about the rest of what we need to do for the state of Georgia.
All right. Well, that sounds very good. We appreciate your time, Representative Barry Fleming, House Majority Whip. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
While House Republicans are decrying the actions of their Democrat colleagues for blocking the passage of Governor Perdue's Hope Chest Amendment and the faith-based funding initiative, House Minority Whip Carolyn Hughley today said that these actions were important to Democrats' constituents.
Yesterday was a great day for the citizens of our state because we protected our public schools by stopping the so-called faith-based amendment, and we also protected hope. We honored the commitment that this General Assembly and previous General Assemblies have already made to the citizens of this state in regard to how we will spend monies from the Georgia lottery. And we've been good stewards of those monies, and I think it was just a great day for our citizens.
Now, Democrats did have some success on the floor yesterday as well in amending a Medicaid waiver bill that was going through as well, working on that. What are some of the other issues that you all are going to try to work on in terms of your agenda as the session progresses?
Well, on the Medicaid waiver bill, we thought it was important to protect our citizens so that if someone has to go to the nursing home, they don't have to worry about the state coming in and taking their asset, which is the family home, which is primarily all that you'll be able to have. So we thought that was very important. As we continue in this session, we will continue to focus on health issues. We want to see health care for all of Georgia's children. And that's something that we still have on the table that we very much want to work on. So we will be spending a lot of time and energy on that.
And I understand as part of your legislative agenda as well, you all had some other education issues in addition to the health care. What's the progress in the education arena?
Well, we have not seen very much progress in the education arena, but that's a function of the way our system is set up here. But we have 9 more legislative days, and we will be looking for opportunities to do our best for the citizens of this state. As with the Medicaid bill, it was not our bill, but it was an opportunity to bring forth a measure that was in the best interest of Georgians, and we did that to the benefit of everyone. So we will be taking those kind of opportunities because most of our bills were stalled in committee. And as you know, as of the 30th day, if it has not passed the House, then it is dead for this session unless it is attached to some other piece of legislation, and that's the part of the game that we're in now.
All right, well, we'll be watching that, I guess, as the session progresses to see how you all are making the moves in those areas. Thank you so much for joining us. Representative Carolyn Hughley, the House Minority Whip.
Thank you.
The Senate passed a bill today that changes provisions involving homestead exemptions. Senator Eric Johnson introduced House Bill 81, which protects the surviving spouse of the deceased.
Coming out of an issue in Chatham County where we did a property tax freeze and then found out that when the person whose property owns the property and has the exemption dies, the title transfers to the surviving spouse, but the tax assessors read it as that was time to reassess the property, that the freeze went off. So we've taken care of that in the Chatham County local legislation. This is a statewide version of the same thing that says if you have a homestead exemption and you die, your surviving spouse maintains that exemption.
Senator Emanuel Jones successfully added an amendment that allows a spouse to still receive this homestead exemption even if they remarry.
The essence of this committee amendment is as long as the spouse remains in the home, whether or not that person remarries or not, would still be eligible. As long as they did not vacate the home or move out of the home, the person would still be eligible to keep those same homestead exemptions.
Now, House Bill 81 passed as amended, so it now must go back to the House for their approval.
3 retirement benefit-related bills passed the Senate today. Senator Bill Heath carried all 3 House bills. One dealt with retirement allowances. The second allows Capitol employees to buy out part-time employment to increase their benefits. And the third boosts post-retirement benefits for teachers who retired before 1986.
If you retired prior to 1974, this would give you an increase in retirement benefits by 10%. If you retired between 74 and 82, 6%, and between 82 and 87, this would provide for a 2% increase. Folks, these retired teachers retired at a time when they weren't, the teachers' salaries were extremely low, and their retirement benefits are based on those salaries. 644 is a bill which simply changes a date in the current code which will allow some Capitol employees who were employed in a part-time capacity in the past to buy back some of their old part-time employment. In the current code, there's a hard-coded figure of $3,500. If you had contributed less than $3,500, it's mandatory that you withdraw that money from the pension fund. If you leave that fund, this would change that and allow that amount to be set by the board.
House Bills 400, 644, and 1020 all passed unanimously and now go to Governor Sonny Perdue for his signature.
A bill that would protect the right of public employees and students to say Merry Christmas received a unanimous do-pass recommendation from the Senate State and Local Government Operations Committee. Bill author, Representative Clay Cox, presented House Bill 950.
We felt like that, gosh, there's probably maybe even a majority of students and teachers and public employees who would like to express themselves using the word Christmas in celebration of that legal holiday. And so House Bill 950 does just that. It makes certain that our constitutional rights are reaffirmed in our public sector employees and our students so that they are free to express themselves in appropriate ways, certainly, but in a way that celebrates Christmas or any other public or legal holiday.
Maggie Garrett of the ACLU was also at the meeting and explained that she did not oppose the bill, but would like some changes made. These changes would include adding language that clarifies the instances when a student's free speech could be denied.
Saying you can't restrict speech unless the expression materially disrupts and substantially interferes with the requirements of appropriate discipline and the operation of the school. 2, threatens immediate harm to the welfare of the school or community. 3, encourages unlawful activity or interferes with another's individual rights, which actually sets out the categories that the Supreme Court has set out where you can restrict student speech, and actually clarifies for teachers that they cannot prevent you from saying Merry Christmas unless it somehow threatens the operation of the school, which it won't do.
House Bill 950 now moves to the Senate Rules Committee.
The Senate Judiciary Committee held hearings today on House Bill 239. Under this bill, the winner of a civil case could receive compensation for the legal fees if the final decision falls within certain parameters. This would only happen if the initial settlement were rejected before the trial. The Georgia Trial Lawyers Association is offering its own version of the bill. The group says that the law should include all cases involving monetary claims, and it also says that parties would have to choose between the awarded settlement or recovering legal fees. Committee Chair Preston Smith says the TLA's proposed legislation would create several loopholes in the law. But representatives for the TLA say these alleged loopholes are merely guidelines for judges to determine awards.
Governor Sonny Perdue proclaimed March as American Red Cross Month in Georgia. With more is Lawmakers' Lauren Brown.
Today, volunteers, employees, and supporters of the American Red Cross came together as John Watson, Chief of Staff for Governor Sonny Perdue, proclaimed March as American Red Cross Day in Georgia.
Since 1943, the President has declared March as American Red Cross Month in honor of the humanitarian work of the Red Cross in our country and around the world. This year, we continue that tradition as the Governor has proclaimed March as American Red Cross Month in Georgia. Last year, the devastating hurricanes in the Gulf Coast region tested the Red Cross and the state like never before, and the Red Cross rose to the occasion.
This year marks the 125th anniversary of the Red Cross. To celebrate, Red Cross workers provided information on what to do in an emergency, how to plan for disasters, and set up a blood drive. For years, blood donors have been the foundation of the Red Cross's mission. I rolled up my sleeves in hopes I too could help save a life. The Red Cross is also congressionally chartered to provide emergency services to the U.S. military and their families. In 2005, 24,000 Georgia military families were recipients of this kind of aid. Donations made to the Red Cross, Georgians have helped the lives of local patients in over 140 Georgia hospitals. Reporting and bleeding for Lawmakers, I'm Lauren Brown.
Today, the Links Incorporated, representing about 10,000 professional women of color, came to the Capitol in support of Healthy People 2010.
We support Healthy People 2010, the nation's health objectives for the year 2010, which is focused on 2 overarching goals. Number 1, to increase quality and years of healthy life, and 2, to eliminate health disparities. We are also committed to an increasing role in closing the gap in poverty and education within the minority community. Today, we have come to our state capitol to appeal to the state legislators and constitutional officers for expanded support of the Healthy People 2010 initiative and the support for historical black colleges and universities.
The southern area of the Links Incorporated has implemented a program called Links to Health, which promotes awareness about 6 areas of health disparities: infant mortality, cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, HIV/AIDS, and immunizations.
The organization Georgia Born and Georgia Artists displayed artwork at the Capitol yesterday. Everyone walking under the Gold Dome had the opportunity to enjoy the artwork by various artists throughout the state.
This is our 3rd year at the Capitol. We come here annually during legislative session, and we have just returned from Washington from the Senate Rotunda, where our art was on display for a week. And most of my photography you'll see will be landscapes and wildlife, and most of the wildlife is Georgia wildlife. And you'll see I have the believe the butterflies here, those were taken in Georgia, the ducks, all of the wildlife that you see in my pieces are from the state of Georgia. Our show is different every year, and it's always a surprise to me as to what the artists are going to bring. And when I founded this group 3 years ago, I was excited about it. Our first show was very successful, and we got a lot of wonderful feedback from the legislators. And we truly enjoy coming to the Capitol and showing off our artwork. And our artists are wonderful, and they always produce wonderful pieces for us each and every year. And it's always different. It's not always nature, but we have a good mix.
Senators Bill Stevens and Nancy Schaefer, along with Lieutenant Governor Mark Taylor, own some of the art from Georgia Born and Georgia Artists.
Well, the first week in May this year will be recognized as Bluegrass Week in Georgia. Senator Jim Whitehead sponsors Senate Resolution 844, which promotes this year's Lincoln County Bluegrass Festival.
Lincoln County, the home of the famous Lewis family of Lincoln, Georgia, known as the first family of bluegrass gospel music, always has the Lewis family Homecoming Bluegrass Festival. We're asking that this body vote May 1st through 7th, 2006 as Bluegrass Music Week in Georgia.
Senate Resolution 844 passed unanimously, so be sure to visit Bluegrass Week in Lincoln County the first week in May.
The Henry County High School Symphonic Band performed at the Capitol for lawmakers today. Here are some highlights from their performance. Coming up tomorrow on Lawmakers, the Senate is expected to debate legislation that would remove the prohibition against selling public transportation tokens and tickets. And the House is slated to take up Senator Mitch Seaball's Voice over Internet Protocol, or VoIP bill. We'll have those stories and all the latest from Under the Gold Dome tomorrow night at 7. If you have missed any part of this Lawmakers broadcast, tune in tomorrow morning when Lawmakers repeats at 5:30 a.m. Now stay tuned for Wild Chronicles. That's coming up next here on GPB.
And that's our broadcast for this, the 31st legislative day of the Georgia General Assembly. I'm Wendy Lawson.
And I'm David Zelski. Thanks for joining us. Have a great evening.
Good night.
This has been a production of Georgia Public Broadcasting.